Hello everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Today this webinar is designed for those of you who are new to the embroidery. Today we'll be focusing on backing basics. Perhaps you've just started up a shop or purchased a machine, or you simply just want to refresh yourself. There is a lot of stuff to learn for embroidery. There's a lot of elements. Backing is a key one. So you've come to the right place. My name is Nancy Minnie, and I've been with Madeira for 11 years now, doing marketing and customer service. Over the past couple of years, I've been more hands-on, learning how to embroider, researching and testing products with customers, and helping Madeira anticipate customers' needs. We try to do as much research here as possible in order to learn the industry that we serve. And also here with me today is Nate Moore from Melco. Nate, would you like to share your role at Melco?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the educational specialist here at Melco. I offer a lot of the online training and in-class training as well here at Melco for the MI XTS and design shop that we have. Been in the industry since '97, been here at Melco for the last four and a half years of that, and I encourage you guys to please chat in your questions, and I'll do my best to keep up with them.
Thanks, Nate. So fabric plays a major role in choosing the correct backing to use. The purpose of backing, which is also known as a stabilizer, is to stabilize the fabric while the design is being stitched out. It should also continue to support that design through normal wear and tear, which includes your laundering as well. Other factors to consider are the stitch length, the stitch density, the size of the design, and what is that garment's function. If your stitch lengths are going to be real short and tight, if the design is going to be real dense, or if that design is just really big, you want to consider going to a heavier backing in order to support that. What is the color of that material that you're actually embroidering on? Is it dark? Maybe you want to use a black backing to minimize the differences between that, especially if it's going to be seen. End products like your towels, your blankets, jackets, and things like that, where you're going to see the back of that backing, maybe you want to use a tearaway. Maybe you want to use black if it's dark. There's a lot of things to consider when you're looking to choose that backing. Is it going to be worn close to the skin? You want to make sure that backing is soft so it doesn't irritate the skin. Are you just starting out? For your general embroidery, a heavyweight tearaway and a medium weight cutaway is a good way to start yourself. Backings are available in pre-cuts and rolls. You'll need to decide which of those are going to work best for you. Pre-cuts are probably more efficient. They're already pre-cut to the size of the average hoops that are out there, but if you need larger pieces, probably the roll is the way to go. Or if you just have the time to cut them up and you want to save a little money, that's also a good way to go. Are you going to do caps? Then you're going to want to add a heavyweight tearaway. The heavyweight tearaways are usually for caps, so they're specially cut for your caps. They're about 4 inches wide, and they come in pre-cuts and rolls as well.
Those longer rolls for the cap backing are actually really nice for that 270-degree print that we do with that the XTS cap frame that we have.
Cutaway backings are your most popular backings. This is what you probably should be using for the most part. They give you the best stability. We'll talk about tearaway backings in just a little bit, but cutaway backings are good for your stretchy knits, any garments that are going to be worn next to the skin, and again, we have that high density designs, large designs as well need the cutaway backing in order to support that design. You would also use it for your loosely woven fabrics, your dress shirts, your Oxfords, those types of things. Cutaway backings are available in a light, medium, and heavyweight in order to accommodate your need. Using the lightest weight backing as possible is going to give you as long as you're supporting the design, is going to give you the best results. You don't want to use a heavy weight if you don't need it. Backings are measured in weights, in ounces. What those ounces mean are it's the ounces per square yard of that product. So the heavier the bigger that number is, the heavier that weight of that backing is. Tearaway backings. Tearaway backings do have a need. If you're embroidering on a product that just seems like it has enough stability all on its own, you still want to use a backing. It's important to have a backing when you embroider on these high-speed embroidery machines. That hooped garment is going to glide back and forth on the needle plate, and you want that backing there so it makes it smoother. It's going to slide a lot smoother than your fabric on its own. Tearaway backings you would want to use for your tightly woven or stable woven fabrics like the heavy-duty denims, cotton twills, canvas, terry towels. You would want to use a tearaway backing because you want that to disappear on the back. There's washaway backings that are available for those instances when you want that tearaway backing to completely disappear. You just tear it away like you would a normal tearaway, and then any remaining pieces that are visible in those small letters inside the O's and whatnot, that will disappear in the first wash. These two are also available in a light, medium, and heavyweight, and you'll notice that those ounces tend to go down when you're talking about a tearaway, 1 ounce to a 2 ounce backing.
So one of the questions that just came in on the chat was, with tearaway backing, do you use just one sheet?
It's always best to use one sheet if you can get away with that. We're going to move into some specialty backings after this, and we'll give you some instances when using 2 pieces is okay. But for your best results, using 1 piece is the best way to go because you're looking to stabilize that fabric during the embroidery process. If you're adding more layers in there, then you might be losing some of that stability. So adjusting your weights, if you feel you need something heavier, is the better way to go as opposed to using 2 layers. You're welcome, Katrina. So onto the specialty backings. For caps, there's
Sorry,
that.
I need to jump in just for a minute.
Sure.
One of the big questions from this morning's session was, what is the best backing for moisture wicking or the moisture management or the dry fit? That was big this morning. I have a feeling it's going to be big this afternoon too. We will definitely talk about that one for you. One of the products that's coming up is actually not a bad option for that too. So hold on tight to that, and we'll definitely get to it.
Absolutely. So back to the cap, tearaway backing. It is specially cut for your caps. It's roughly about a 4-inch, 4.5-inch wide backing that fits inside your cap frames along with your cap in order to hold those stable during your embroidery. This is, again, the heaviest tearaway backing. Around a 2.5 to 3 ounce tearaway backing is good for this application. There's been, I think, a little bit of movement into a heavier tearaway backing, so that there are some that are a little bit heavier than the tear. Keep in mind these are the canvas and cotton type, baseball type caps. We're not talking about knit caps here. Knit caps are, you would want to put a cutaway backing in there for that knit. Another possibility is the tear wash, depending on the cap stability. The Weblon No-Show Cutaway is a product that is an all-around general cutaway stabilizer that can accommodate quite a few different applications. One of those is that moisture wicking fabric. You would want to use this product for when that garment is sheer. That's why it's called a no-show. It's a real thin cutaway backing that has quite a bit of stability to it. Sometimes it's made of 100% nylon, but sometimes it is referred to in the industry as a poly mesh. It has kind of a woven look to it, although it is not woven. It's a non-woven product. So you'd want to use that for your light and your sheer garments to prevent that show-through or badge effect. Great on t-shirts. On its own, it's great for up to 8,000 stitches, approximately, depending on how tight those stitches are. And If you need a little extra stability, you can either combine it with two pieces, or you can use it with a lightweight tearaway that you can tear away. That lightweight tearaway addition is the best way for those moisture wicking backings. What you do is you place the lightweight tearaway, about a 1 ounce tearaway, down first. You put the Weblon on top of it, and then the garment, and then you're going to hoop it, so that when you're done embroidering, you simply tear away that lightweight tearaway, and then you trim around the easy Weblon backing. Another product out there is a poly mesh. This is a true poly mesh cutaway backing. It is actually one of the very few woven backings that are out there. This one is made of 100% polyester, and its main uses is for, you would actually want to use a tearaway along with this one as well. It is a real lightweight fabric. That tearaway will give it a little extra stability during the embroidery process. If you've got a lot of designs with points that you're having some difficulty with, this might be a product that you could try. It also works well for the really thin, narrow columns in designs. It helps hold its shape a little bit better. Digitizing is important, when it comes to these products, these types of embroidery as well.
Hey, Nancy.
Sure.
We had a question that said, did you say up to 8,000 stitches? And I apologize, it was scrolling fast enough that I didn't catch when that was.
Yep, I actually see that one, and I believe that would have been for the easy web, or the Weblon no-show backing is what she was referring. Yep,
that totally makes sense.
Generally good for up to the 8,000 stitches.
And we were talking about knits. One of the ones that just popped up was talking about ribbed knits, like the 1x1 or the 2x1 ribs that come in close to the body.
Yeah. I would use that Weblon no-show for that as well, depending on the design.
Anything that holds really, really tight like that. Now, if it's incredibly stretchy and I need that stability of a little bit beefier of a cutaway, then I would go back to that. However, the beefier the cutaway, the more likely you are to have kind of that halo outline, or we refer to it sometimes as the badge effect, where you see a bit of that edge too. So it's a bit of a trade-off. If I can get away with the Weblon no-show, that's preferable. If I need a little bit more oomph to my backing, then maybe I have to go back up to that.
Yeah. We will get into a little bit more of that badge or halo effect later on. Easy stick-on backing is a backing that works well for the hard-to-hoop items. The examples shown here are the cuff of a shirt sleeve or the collar on the shirt sleeve. These are something that you just it's really hard to hoop these and get them nice and flat and stable in order to embroider. So stick-on works pretty well for this application. Stick-on has a release paper. That what you do with this is you hoop it inside of a hoop, the backing itself with that release paper facing up. And once you've hooped it nice and firm, you go ahead and you score. I find it best to just score a big X in there, and then once you can get those points in the middle started, you can start ripping it away. And then what you're left with is a nice sticky surface that you can stick these down onto, and it's a nice firm stick that it gives you in order to embroider the products that are hard to hoop. These go anywhere from a pocket, a shirt sleeve, a collar, a belt, socks. You'd also want to use it if the fabric you're embroidering on is going to leave distinct hoop burns that you're not going to be able to get rid of. Those would include things like a brushed corduroy or velour. You've probably all experienced that when you go to hoop those and take them out. It's almost impossible to get rid of those hoop burns. So this will eliminate that. It's also great, I think I saw a question scroll by, this is great for the really stretchy materials like a bathing suit or the bicycle shorts, and what this enables you to do is actually stretch that fabric out a little bit before you actually embroider it, so that it will embroider the design properly, so that when you wear it and it's stretched out, the design itself doesn't get distorted. It actually doesn't look as good when it's not on you as it does when it's on you, on a person. I
would add that while using the adhesive backings, the stick-on tearaways and whatnot, to consider using maybe a titanium-coated needle to help prevent some of that adhesive from sticking to the needle and kind of gumming up the works. One of the questions that flew by that I couldn't remember the answer to, or I got a little bit confused with everything that was going on. Weblon is also referred to as what, Nancy?
It's a Weblon no-show.
And then some people also call it something else?
Oh, a poly mesh. They do, they get a little bit confused from time to time, which is why I put this poly mesh in here as well to tell to kind of describe the difference. That Weblon, what you want is a Weblon no-show that's made of nylon. The nylon enables you to be able to iron it on the back if you need to. So if you want to kind of press out your garment once it's done, that nylon can withstand the heat. There are some polypropylene type products that are similar, and you just got to be careful with those because they can melt when you go to iron. One other application for this stick-on backing is for your fast frames. Those are frames that are out there that basically look like a nice flat window frame, and you take the release paper off this, stick it to the underside of those frames, and you have this nice big area where you can embroider multiple pieces at a time. And it is a tearaway. Once that stick-on backing is torn away from the garment, it doesn't leave any residue on the garment for the most part. Couple more specialty backings that are out there. There's fire resistant and fire retardant backings, and these backings are used for what they sound like. You're going to use them whenever safety is a concern or when regulations require that you're doing this. Examples of these would be the firefighters, in anybody in the aeronautics industry or the motorsports industry where fire can be a concern. They want to make sure that the embroidery that goes on those suits and everything that goes with it falls within the standards that are needed to keep them safe. Comfort wear is a backing liner or finisher. It's a cover-all-up that goes over the back of finished embroidery. It's applied to the back side, and it's used to prevent irritation for sensitive skin. This is especially true for children's wear. You go into a children's wear shop and you look at the back side of all of those embroidered garments, and you're going to see this product under there. It's also good for anybody with sensitive skin, especially if you're embroidering with metallics. Metallics can be a little prickly on the backside with those little pieces sticking out. Creates a beautiful design, but the backside can be a little bit irritating. If you just apply this on the back, it works pretty well. What you do is you turn your embroidery over, lay this on top of it, and you cut probably roughly about a ½ inch wider than the actual embroidery. And one side has, if you're marking this with a pen or whatever, you want to make sure that your bumpy side is down on top of the embroidery, because that's the side that actually has the adhesive on it, and it's going to be activated by an iron or a press. And you just cut that out, lay it down, and press it on, and you'll feel that the side that's going to touch your skin is nice and silky and soft, and it feels good. When you are cutting these, you do want to make sure that you're rounding the corners. The example on the left on the pink striped shirt has square corners. This one may, over time in the laundry, actually those corners might lift because the points on those corners are more apt to do that. If you round the corners, then it will last most likely for the life of the garment. Also out there are toppings. The most popular one is a water-soluble topping. It is removed with water. And when you would want to use this is on fabric that has high profile. Things like terry towels, fleece, corduroy, or anything that has a lot of loft to it. And if you embroider on it, it might sink in. The stitches may sink in. There's 3 different examples here. The one on the left has the topping on it. The ones on the right do not. The most prominent one is that one in the center, the big flower one, where you can actually see the gaps on the right side because that topping wasn't used. The one on the top is done on terry toweling. The one in the middle is done on heavyweight knit sweater type material, and the one on the bottom is a knit cap. The one on the top has real small letters, and the one on the bottom has real thin letters. So these are just examples of where you just might run into those stitches sinking in too far.
One thing that I would also add from a digitizing and an embroidery standpoint is that remember that this will wash away. It is water soluble, so you may want to consider using some underlay to keep your embroidery looking nice even after it's been washed and that's been washed away. Do we recommend double layering a topping?
I think if you're double layering it, I think you're trying to cover up what Nate was just talking about. You want to make sure that the digitizing is properly done in order to prevent that. You really shouldn't have to double up the topping. I think this works well with the small letters. So if you're using a really thin thread, or the thinner thread, the 60 weight thread, 40 weight's your standard weight and 60 weight is a thinner thread. There's a lot of logos out there that have their company logo or saying underneath them, and those letters underneath that are pretty small. Using the 60 weight thread will help make those letters clearer. And we do recommend that you use a topping with those as well, because it does aid in the making those letters a little more crisp. But like Nate,
I definitely think combining the 60 weight thread, maybe a center walk underlay, just a one kind of right down the middle of it, and then I think that would be fantastic. Even on a piqué, it will help clean that up quite a bit with that water soluble.
Absolutely. There's usually a lot of questions about how to remove this because it can be challenging from time to time. What you do, when you're using it, some people do hoop it in there with all their fabrics and backings. It goes on the top. Some people just lay it on top, and you can do that. You just want to make sure you're taping it down in the corners, keeping it, just a little bit taut so that it doesn't double up and, cause bumps within the actual embroidery. That could create issues down the road. So once you've actually embroidered it and you're taking care of your backing and whatnot, this tears off very similar to a tearaway backing, and it is going to leave little pieces inside, little letters and little crevices and things like that. So there's going to be little areas that are going to be hard to get them off. So the best thing to use to actually get it off is the actual product itself. So once you've torn off, you're left with a bunch of pieces. What you do with that is you just kind of roll it up in a ball, and you spritz it with some water or mist on one side of that ball and let it get a little bit sticky. Give it a few seconds or a minute or so, just so it gets kind of tacky, and then you take that and you dab it into those areas where the pieces are stuck. And once you lift it off, it might take a couple of tries. It'll lift it up. Here are some common errors when choosing backing. I think the most common error out there is using the tearaway when a cutaway should be used. I think people tend to be attracted to that, the ability to just tear it away and you're done. But you want to be careful of that. Another common error is using multiple layers to compensate either poor digitizing or to compensate for designs with high stitch counts. You want to make sure that the digitizing is done properly. If the digitizing is done properly and you've got the right weight backing on hand, you really should only need that one layer. Using one layer when at all possible is the best way to go. If it has high stitch counts, then you need to use a heavier backing in order to accommodate all those stitches. Using multiple pieces or backing that is too heavy, creating that badge or halo effect. That badge effect is, Nate was explaining that a little bit earlier, in that it's the ability to see the backing behind the garment. It might be because the garment's really thin, but it could be even for a thick garment that you wouldn't normally see it, but you're actually seeing the outline of that backing. The idea is to see the embroidery, not the backing, and you just want to be careful that you're not creating that effect. Certainly using a tearaway on a t-shirt, using a full front design, it's just not going to support that. Cutaway backings require that extra step of cutting it away when the embroidery is done. High production companies often will go for the tearaway backing to increase their production time, but be careful not to be attracted to that ease, and only use a tearaway when it's appropriate. Presentation to your company or to your customers is important, so be aware that the true effects of a poor backing choice or a low quality backing may not show up until after the product has actually been laundered. So it might take a wash or two and then it just doesn't look so good. So you just want to make sure that you're using, number one, the right backing, and number two, a quality backing. So you want to be aware poor results can result in lower number of repeat business. So we've got a few.
That's so true. One of the first places that I started working used lightweight tearaway on sweatshirts all the time, and we would do big full front designs where the lettering had to line up, and it was the digitizing's department job to offset enough in the software that when it sewed out, it would in theory line up. And there are so many better ways of doing that than trying to compensate for poor backing choices. So definitely huge on choosing the appropriate one.
Yeah. We do have a few examples here in order to just kind of show you, what happens when you do. We got some examples that are going to show the same exact design, the same exact fabric, but a tearaway was used in one and a cutaway was used in the other. So you can see on the top is the tearaway, and you can see all that puckering that's going on. It certainly doesn't look that good, and I wouldn't want to present that to my customer. But the one on the bottom certainly looks great, and using that cutaway on this knit t-shirt-like material produced the right effect. The second example here is a very similar fabric. It's a t-shirt-like material. Tearaways on the left, cutaways on the right, and you can see the puckering going on again. But I think more prominent is that registration alignment is out. The tearaway backing just did not hold this fabric in place or stabilize it throughout the whole design. When it went to do the outline, it skewed itself over, and you can see the big gap on the left side. The one on the right, of course, looks great. And a third example just shows very similar. This is done on a PK knit. It is a dark fabric, so it's a little bit hard to see the puckering that's going on, but it is there. You can kind of see it in the center of the apple. But again, that registration went out and didn't keep it stabilized.
So earlier in the chat, we were talking about the curling of a design, and some of it was due to poor backing choice. But if you look in the apple here, you'll actually see on the one on the left there are two kind of little vertical ripples, and that to some extent was caused by the backing, but to some extent it was caused by a vertical stitch direction falling into a vertical knit. So this is an image of that. This also, both of these used water-soluble topping to keep those letters up out of the texture of the material.
We got a question over here from Joe that says, I'm able to tear off 2-ounce cutaway backing. Is that damaging the design? I would say most likely it is. If you have a cutaway that's actually tearing away, or you're able to tear it away, then it can be the sign of a poor backing or low quality backing. Certainly a 2-ounce cutaway shouldn't be tearing away. If you're embroidering on denim that's stable enough, you might want to consider using an actual tearaway. But that tearing away should actually happen pretty easily, because that is one of the other issues with a tearaway is you can actually damage the design. It'll pull in certain areas and might warp it a little bit.
One thing I tend to do when I'm using a tearaway is I will flip the garment inside out and I will put my hand down on the design, and then I will tear away from that very carefully.
Yeah. So how can you tell if you do have an inferior backing, or how can you tell if it's actually good? A good tearaway backing should be able to withstand repeated perforations. What that means is you want to, when you're embroidering and you turn that, after you're done and you turn that over, that backing should not be like all hanging off of it, because it just kind of created a cutout of your design within that backing. You should be tearing that tearaway off when you're done. It shouldn't be falling off. It should also tear clean and crisp in both directions without leaving behind those visible hairy fibers. Some of your tearaways out there are, when you tear them, they just don't tear nice and crisp. So that's kind of what you're looking for in a tearaway. You don't want it to damage the design when you're pulling it off, and if it tears off nice, clean, and crisp, you should be okay. Along with what Nate was saying about holding on to the design as well. A top quality cutaway backing should maintain the crispness of the design as well as hold its shape throughout multiple wash cycles. Like I was saying before, you want to make sure that, do some testing with it. If you're not sure, do some testing and make sure that it can withstand the wash cycles. There are two types of backings out there. One is called a wet laid backing and one is called a dry laid backing. You're generally not going to see this when you're looking at embroidery backings, and it's not really kind of advertised what they are, but wet laid backings are made for embroidery. You can tell if it's for the most part, you can tell if it's a wet laid backing if you hold it up to the light and you can kind of see through it a little bit. It should look consistent throughout the whole backing piece. If you're seeing areas of light and dark, then it's most likely not a wet laid, or it's a poorly made wet laid backing. If you have little areas that are light, what's happening there is when you go to embroider on it, that's not giving you the stability you need. So if that happens to be right where your design is, you could be running into issues. Again, the best way to do it is if you can use your standard cutaway and use one piece, that's your best way, unless you have those special circumstances.
One of the questions that just popped up, I know we're getting ready to answer a few more, is again that moisture management. Can we kind of review a little bit about what backings would be the best choice for that?
Absolutely. I'll even back up a couple of here. That Easy Weblon no-show backing is the best product for that moisture wicking product. What you do with that, especially if you're using it for moisture wicking, that's the fabric. For anybody who's not aware of what this is, it's a thin, light, stretchy fabric. Under Armour is probably the most commonly known one out there. It's just that real slinky, slick fabric, and you really have it's a challenge to stabilize it. The other challenge is not getting that halo or badge effect with this product because it is such a thin material. Using a tearaway, we're talking about a thin, stretchy fabric, so you certainly wouldn't want to use a tearaway, at least on its own. Use the Weblon no-show along with a 1 ounce tearaway backing. The combination of the two will give you the support you need during the embroidery. Using that lightweight tearaway backing will allow you to be able to tear it away fairly easy because it is a real lightweight tearaway. Usually it's pretty crisp because it is a tearaway, but what you're left with after that is that Weblon no-show, which is a cutaway, so you're just going to trim it around, and it's going to give you a nice low profile underneath that embroidered design when you're wearing the fabric, especially because they tend to be worn pretty tightly on the body. Somebody has a question here about what type of a needle to use on that moisture wicking. This is a knit fabric, and as a general rule, you want to use a ballpoint on your knit fabrics. Your sharp points tend to cut the fabric as opposed to push it aside like the ballpoint does, so definitely use a ballpoint. And you want to use the smallest ballpoint as possible.
And then the weight?
The weight for the needle? I would use the smallest needle you can. 7511 needle is your standard embroidery needle size for your 40 weight thread, but if you do well enough, you can go down to a 65-9 needle for that.
And Margie was actually asking about the weight of the backing.
The weight of the backing. 1 ounce or 1.5 ounce, either one of those will work well. I think they just tend to. There's a couple of colors that are available in this. White is the more common one, but it's also available in a black and a beige as well. So either one of those weights will work. Well, somebody's a fan of the white.
So what's the purpose of the very light, thin, woven-like backing? I've seen it on top of cutaways. Is it the poly mesh that you're speaking of?
What is the purpose of this one?
I'm reading Virginia's question,
Okay.
and I'm trying to, and she's clarifying for me, I hope. So while Virginia's going to check the package, does anybody else have any questions they'd like to chat in?
What would layering look like on lofty bath towels? I'm not sure exactly what she means there.
I think I do, and what, if I understand the question correctly, what I would generally tend to do is have a layer of backing, and in that case, I would consider maybe the Tearaway washaway. That way there's nothing left, and towels are actually relatively stable. Then the towel, and then on top of that have the water-soluble topping. And just make sure that you have a good amount of underlay under that to help with that too.
Right, yeah. Yep, and again, you can hoop those all together, the backing on the bottom, the fabric next, and then the topping on the top. Or if you want to, you can just lay the topping on top. As long as you're securing it in some way, the topping, it will do its job up there.
I'm a huge fan of painter's tape, that blue kind of not quite so sticky masking tape on the edges of my topping. If my topping isn't big enough to hoop in, I will occasionally use that on the edges.
Yeah, it doesn't leave any residues. Yeah.
And if I accidentally hit it with a needle, I've pierced tape, and it's not nearly as bad as piercing something else.
Absolutely. Somebody did have a question about the difference between the poly mesh and the easy Weblon or the Weblon no-show. The basic differences between those is that one is a woven fabric and one is a non-woven. The Weblon is a little bit easier to work with. It's not quite as slippery, being made of the nylon the way it is, and it works pretty well. The poly mesh is made of 100% polyester, so it can be a little bit slippery to work with, so it can be a challenge to hoop. You would want to use the 1.5 or the 1 ounce Tearaway with it as well. But its main uses are for the points on a star, so if you have designs that have a lot of points and you're just having difficulty embroidering that without those points kind of just pulling in and not looking well, or you get some really thin columns that you feel are pulling in as well, this backing could help that. We do have a water-soluble stabilizer. It is called Badge Master, and generally that is one of the products out there that's used for doing the standalone lace. Absolutely. Puckering definitely can.
Go ahead, Nancy. I was having a hard time typing and keeping up, so I can jump in and say it real quick, but you seem to be on it.
Yeah, if you hooping is a challenge in and of itself, but definitely if you're hooping it too tight, what's happening is once you release it, it's just going to pull in. So you want to find that happy medium. They use a term called a tambourine-like skin is what you're looking for. It shouldn't be pulling. You want to hoop the fabric. You don't want to be pulling the fabric after you've hooped it, because once you do that, you're starting to distort the fabric.
One thing that you can do to kind of test is when you have it hooped, you can actually tap on the inside, not on the underneath side, but tap on the inside, and what you're actually doing is mimicking the presser foot. So when you're tapping on it, you're not being super light, but you're not completely wailing on it. But when you tap, if you see the material move in, that could be an indicator that maybe your hoop isn't quite tight enough. If it's moving in as you're tapping on it, that could be a bit of a problem when you're sewing. And then Eileen says, when stitching out a design on cotton that has Pellon on it, what stabilizer should be used? I've used both Cutaway and Tearaway and have caused puckering, especially after ironing.
So I'm thinking this is something like a shirt cuff or a collar?
Oh, thank you. An internal Pellon. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That it can be a challenge only because you don't know exactly the quality of that Pellon inside that's already in there. So you could have puckering that's already going on, number one. But using that stick-on backing is great for this application. So maybe it's something that you could normally get into a hoop, but maybe you've got a top fabric, a bottom fabric, and that Pellon in between. So the stick-on might be a way to eliminate that.
Carol asked, do you have a chart that would be helpful in classifying the backings by use? I have seen in my classroom a nifty little wheel that you guys have.
We do. The wheel is actually, we don't actually have the wheel anymore. However, we have an electronic version of that. So if you do go to Madeira USA, it is called the Easy Backing Guide, and that does list the end uses and the suggested backings to use with those. I'll just want to caution you a little bit on that. It does tend to give you a lot of quite a few choices for each one, because what you learned today is you learned the basics of choosing your backing. Involves multiple elements, that fabric being the probably the most important one, but the weight of the fabric, the stretch of the fabric, and etc. are going to help you determine the backing. So you've learned that basically you don't want to use a backing any heavier than you actually need, but you want to make sure it's heavy enough to support the stitches that are in the design.
So Dan asked, do you have an iron-on stabilizer?
We actually currently do not have one of those right now, but we are looking for one. We lost our supplier, but we hope to have one real soon. So thank you for asking for that.
Occasionally a touch of the spray adhesive can help with anything that might require that too.
Yeah.
Just be sure to spray it far away from your machine.
Yes.
So many people typing.
They're going crazy.
Do you have black sticky backing?
We don't. We don't even have the white right now, but that'll be something that we'll look into as well. We're always looking for.
I think she was referring to the stick-on.
Oh, the stick-on backing. Thank you. No, we don't. We only have the white right now, but we do get occasionally we'll get asked for that.
So Kim says that spray adhesives tend to cause sticky needles and break my thread. Yes. That's why I tend to avoid adhesives if I can, but if I have to use them, because there are times that you do, maybe I need it for the backing, maybe I need it for applique because I'm not sticking my finger down there and holding the applique as it sews around. If I need to use adhesives, I tend to use titanium needles, and that will help prevent sticking in. Eventually it may build up a little bit, but titanium needles will help with that.
Yeah, you do need to keep an eye on those needles. If it does start building up, you'll gonna want to clean those off. You're going to find that especially true. One thing with a spray adhesive, not everybody knows, is you do want to make sure that dries before you're actually using it. So there's a couple of different ones out there. Some are quick drying, so that you can get on with your business, and some are slow drying, and those allow you to reposition it if you need to. But you do want to make sure that that adhesive is drying before you actually embroider.
Cynthia says make sure to use adhesive that's designed for embroidery, and that's totally true. I had a coworker try to use one of their graphic design adhesives, and I about cried.
Ouch. Well, it looks like the questions are slowing down, but we'll keep going. But in the meantime, I just want to put it out there that, hopefully we have answered most of your questions. We will download the chats and review them to make sure that we've covered everything. And this information is going to be available at MadeiraUSA.com afterwards, and we'll try to get as many questions in there answered as we can. And in the meantime, if you're interested in a free sample pack of the 8x8 pre-cuts, along with some cap backings as well, there's a link there that you can go to in order to just fill out a couple of questions, give us your information, and we'll go ahead and get a sample pack out for you. And there is a place in there for comments, so you can, if you have anything else that you're looking for or need help with anything, just let us know. Both of our information is down at the bottom.
One last question before we let you guys go. Jay asks, when should we use a black color backing?
Mostly it would be to coordinate with the garment itself. If it's going to be seen or even slightly seen, in that garment that you're embroidering on is either black or it's a darker color, having that black backing there will help it blend in a little more. It's especially true for a jacket back, which you're just going to see from time to time, so you don't want this big hunk of white kind of staring you in the face as that jacket back gets viewed from the inside. It's especially true for the dark garments. That's the only time you would really want to.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to use it on something light where you see this giant shadow.
Right, because then you'll get that true halo effect. All right, well, thank you again. We will have this link up once we close down, and please feel free to hop on board and give us your info, and we'll get that sample pack out to you.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye-bye.